Let's begin. So quick recap about motion of center of mass. We saw that the displacement of center of mass is given by the formula. It is the weighted mean of the individual displacements of the particles divided by total mass. Okay, like that, the velocity of the center of mass becomes summation mv divided by the total mass. Okay. Now, likewise, if we differentiate this equation, you'll also get the formula for acceleration of center of mass. It will be summation ma for each of the particles divided by the total mass. And also from this equation, we can define the momentum of the system as total mass into velocity of center of mass. And that is equal to the summation of the momentum of the individual particles. So here capital M is total mass. So these are some of the equations that we have seen derived in the last lecture. Now also when we differentiate this particular equation, we get the impulse momentum theorem. That is the net external force acting on a system equals to rate of change of its momentum. The dynamical equation for a system of particles. And from here we saw that if we have a system on which the net external force is zero, then its momentum should remain conserved. Okay, so this is what we've seen so far. Okay, so let's begin with an example today. This is similar type of example to what we've seen last week, but with little bit of complication in comparison as far as the calculation is concerned. So once again, on a smooth surface, we have a long plank. Okay. So this is a smooth horizontal surface. Now this is a plank of mass 25 kilograms and length 12 meters. Now on the plank initially, there are three people, A, B, and C. Okay. So mass of A is 75 kgs, mass of B is 50 kgs, and mass of C is also 50 kgs. Okay, now initially A and C are at the ends and B is at the midpoint. Okay, like this. Now after some time, E walks to the other end of the plank, while B walks to the left to A's original position, and C also walks to the left to the midpoint. So all this shifting happens, that basically A goes and occupies C's original position. C comes to the midpoint and B comes to A's original position. So they swap positions in this way. So during the swapping of positions, okay, because the surface is frictionless, so during all this shifting, because the horizontal surface on which the plank is lying is frictionless, the plank is going to slide. Okay, so we have to find the displacement of the plank during this shifting of positions, and the displacements of A, B, and C with respect to ground frame. So let's try out this question. Okay, so just go through the question first and try to understand the basic principle we have to apply in this question. No, Jitesh, that's not correct. The displacement of the plank will not be zero because, see, the idea is as A moves towards the right now, because of A's motion, the plank will tend to shift towards the left because
Yes,
of momentum.
yes, sir. Got it.
And like that, because B and C are moving towards the left, so the plank will shift towards the right. But overall, you have to see what dominates. Okay. So the plank is not going to have zero displacement. The concept we'll apply here is if you take a system consisting of the three people plus the plank, on that system, the net external force is zero. Okay. So momentum of the system is conserved. And because the system was initially at rest, so it remains zero. So velocity of center of mass is zero. That means displacement of the center of mass is zero. So the whole system center of mass, not this, not the center of the plank, but the whole system center of mass, it should remain at rest. So A, B,
Yes,
C, and the plank, the four items of the system, the four parts of the system are individually moving around towards right and left. Okay. But in such a way that the net displacement of the center of mass should be zero. So the center of mass should remain where it is. So this is the principle we have to apply in this question. Okay. Just try this out now. Okay, people, let's understand this question. So I've received answers from some of you. I'll verify that. Okay, so one simple way to understand this question is that originally, when E was at the left, left end and all this, where is the center of mass located with respect to the plank itself? Okay, you will notice that it
At
is
the middle.
no, because
No, not at
I mean,
middle.
center of mass of
But,
the plank is at the middle, no problem
uh,
there. Okay. But the system
when
center of
masses
mass,
are put in onto it, then the center of mass will change its position.
okay, so the center of mass of the system is located somewhere between where A is and where B is, you know?
हाँ sir.
Okay, because we have here 75 kgs, okay, we have here 50 kgs, and we have here 50 kg, plus the plank, let's say this midpoint is O, the plank is also 25 kg, no? So the plank's center of mass is at the midpoint, you know, over here. So the system center of mass will be somewhere here, let's say.
Yes sir.
Okay, so let's do one thing. Let's take this as our x-axis.
So it will be at the 900 upon 175 mark.
So in this case, you can see that this distance, we can get this like this, that into this calculation xcm. So summation max, summation mx. So that will become 75 into minus L by 2. Okay. Plus these two are at 0, 0 and plus 25 into plus L by 2 divided by the total mass, which is 75 plus 50 plus 50 plus 25. So that is, okay, sorry, this is 50, not 25. The mass of C is also 50. So it's 75 minus 50. So that's minus 25 into L by 2 divided by the denominator is how much? 200. So it is minus L by 8. So it is minus of L was how much? 12. This is where the center of mass is located. That means that distance D is 12 by 8 meters, or 1.5 meters to the left. Okay. Okay, so far this is clear up to this point.
Yes sir.
Okay, now see what happens is by the time all these changes have occurred, that A has moved to the other point and all that, by that time the center of mass, I mean by that time the plank should have shifted in such a way that the center of mass remains where it was earlier. So if I now represent the new diagram below, but actually it's superimposed with the diagram above. So what should happen is that now A is here. So 75 kg is here. Okay. B is at the midpoint. Oh, okay. So 50 kg plus the plank also has 25 kg. Okay. And C has reached here. So 50 kg. So this time the center of mass is to the right of the plank, somewhere here, let's say. But if I compare this center of mass position to the original position, the displacement of the center of mass should be 0. Okay. So now the center of mass is where? Now you'll notice the symmetry. The center of mass is at the same distance D to the right, no?
Yes
Because
sir.
yes, so we don't need to repeat that calculation. So now if you see where the plank has shifted, the plank has shifted this much. This is the displacement of the plank. Okay. So the displacement of the plank with the proper sign convention and all is minus 3 meters I cap. Okay. And as a result of that, how much A has displaced? A is displaced from here to here. So this is the displacement of E in the ground frame. So displacement of E is plus of 9 I cap in meters. Displacement of B, similarly, you can see, will become 6 plus 3. Okay, that's also plus 9 I cap. And displacement of C will also become, sorry, minus 9, not plus 9. B and C are moving backwards.
So
Yes.
to find the initial center of mass, we could have added B and C's mass and then found between A and B, right?
To find the initial center of mass, we could have done what? Come again, Rita? Didn't follow what you said today. Just repeat.
Hello.
Yeah.
Sir, we could have added B and C, mass of
Hmm.
B and C, and found center of mass between A and okay, no.
So if you
A
add
and
B and C, then you will have to place a 100 kg person at the midpoint of B and C.
okay, yes, sir, I got it.
Understood? You could do that way. There's no problem. Okay, but this is more convenient. Okay.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Now, so I'm just going over the method once again. Okay. So you can see that in the original position, the center of mass of the system is to the left of the origin at a distance of 1.5 meters. Okay, let's just check this calculation again. So this is minus 75 plus 50 into L by 2, and L by 2 is 6 divided by 200. Okay, so that's minus 1 by 8 of 6. I made a mistake in the calculation, beta. Okay, so this is not minus 12 by 8. Okay, just make a correction here. This is, see, this factor is 1 by 8 and we are multiplying it with L by 8. Sorry, L by 2. So this should be L by 16 now. So it is minus 12 by 16, or that's the same thing as minus 6 by 8. So this is minus 0.75. So just make a correction here. Okay. So that's the distance d. So displacement of the plank will therefore become minus 3 I cap in meters, not minus 6 I cap. Okay. So therefore displacement of E will become so displacement of A you can see has a magnitude of the length of the plank minus 3, because this here is also the displacement of the plank 2d or 3 meters. Okay. But displacement of B you can see will become, oh, sorry, what am I doing? This is not 3, this is 1.5. Yeah. So this one is 1.5 I cap in meters. Okay. So displacement of A will become how much? It will become 12 minus 1.5. So that is plus 10.5 I cap. And displacement of B will be equal to displacement of C, which will be half the length of the plank plus 1.5. Okay. So that is 7.5. Okay. So now you can, from this data, you can also check one thing, that displacement of center of mass should be 0. Okay. So summation ms should be 0. So this equation, when you expand, this should be 0. So just put these results here and verify that this is 0. That means the calculation is correct. Okay, so hope this is clear.
Yes, sir.
Yes.
So you can check here now what is happening. This is 75 into, what is the displacement now? 10.5. Okay. Plus these two together will become 100 into minus 7.5. Okay. and the plank's mass is 25 and his displacement is minus 1.5. So this whole sum should be 0. So when you check it out, you'll see this will come out to be 0. So this calculation is correct. Okay.
Yes.
Okay, so this is the method of doing these type of questions. Okay, now let's do another similar type of question that involves conservation of momentum. I mean, similar to what we had done in the last lecture. Okay, so once again, frictionless surface. Now we have two identical blocks of mass m. One of them has a spring attached to it. And this is a smooth surface. And the one which has this spring attached to it is at rest. Let's say this is block B. Spring has spring constant K. This is block A. Now block A is initially moving at a velocity V0. Okay. So now what we'll do is at some instant, if A has come in contact with B through the spring, okay, and the spring is compressed by X, okay, then write any possible equation or possible relation between VA, VB, and X. Okay. And secondly, given that mass of the blocks is 2 kgs each, the spring constant is 25 newtons per centimeter. Okay. Find VA and VB at an instant, and also V0 is given to us. V0 is 10 centimeters per second. So find VA and VB, or let's make V0 actually different. Let's make it 2 meters per second. So find VA and VB at an instant when X is equal to 0.5 centimeters. When the spring is compressed by half a centimeter, at that moment, what is the speed of A and B? Okay. So just try out this question, people will discuss.
Sir, sir, done.
Okay, students, let's work this out. So can anyone tell me what are the conservation principles that we can apply
Yes.
in this?
Sir, momentum and then energy.
Yes, very good. That is what we have to do. We have to apply a combination of momentum conservation.
Sir, we have to assume the maximum compression of this spring, or just like not, it's not the case of that maximum compression.
So maximum compression may or may not be 0.5 centimeters. We can't make the assumption that 0.5 is the maximum. But first of all, we have to write the
Actually,
expression in the first part for
when
any
I
point of
assume
time.
when I assumed the maximum compression, the relation was coming as V naught under root m upon 2k is equal to x. And when
But what you have considered as the maximum compression?
like when the maximum compression of the spring is there, the both the bodies after getting together are moving with a common velocity.
Yeah, that's correct. That's the correct assumption. Okay. But here, so that's okay. That's correct on its own. Okay.
But I have done without assuming the maximum compression also.
Yes. So if you do without assuming the maximum compression, which is the correct thing, because in part 1, you are just asked to find the relation between VA and VB with respect to X at any point of time. So let's say after some time, what has happened is that the spring is now compressed by any X. So this X is not necessarily the maximum compression. At some point of time, it will become the maximum compression, but right now it may or may not be. Okay. So in such a situation, at that moment, if say this has a velocity VA, and by now this has a velocity VB. So the relation that we will write is that one is conservation. So we'll take a system first of all as A plus B plus the spring, right? So for this system, we will write first of all conservation of linear momentum. Linear momentum of the system. So in the first diagram, you can see that is mv naught. In the second diagram, that should be mva plus mvb. So that gives a first relation that va plus vb is always constant in this case because the masses are equal. Okay. And along with that, we also have conservation of mechanical energy of the system. So in the first diagram, that is half mv naught square. In the second diagram, it is the sum of their kinetic energies, okay, plus the potential energy stored in the spring.
Yes.
So this relation is giving us that VA square plus VB square plus K by MX square is equal to V naught square. Okay. So getting this relation. So that's the conclusion of the first part. These are the two expressions.
I expanded that equation fully. So I got like that what you have written in under box in the box. So I expanded it. I got 2m VA VB upon K is equal to x square.
Okay. Okay.
That I substituted the value of V naught there.
Basically you have squared this equation, right? So you have VA plus VB whole square is equal to V naught square. And now you can compare this with this equation. Okay. So you have VA square plus VB square plus K by M x square is equal to VA square plus VB square plus 2VA VB.
Yes.
So we have another relation from this that K by M x square is equal to 2VA VB. So this might be a more useful expression from the comparison. Yeah. Okay. So now coming to the second part, we have to find the value of VA and VB at the instant when x is equal to 0.5 centimeters. Okay. So from equation 1, we have VA plus VB is equal to V naught, which I had given as how much? 1 meter per second. Sorry, 2 meters per second. Okay. And from equation 2, we have VA square plus VB square plus now K was given as 25 Newton per centimeter. So we'll convert this. Okay. So it will become 25 into 10 raised power 2 newtons per meter. And mass of each block was given to us as think it was 2 kg also. Yeah.
So
Yes.
can you explain like how VA and VB are at different velocities fine at the final instance?
How? Sorry, come again.
How VA and A and B are at different velocities.
Yeah. So that's what we are finding now. Acha, why A and B are having different velocities?
Yes.
Okay, because see what is happening now. Initially, A's velocity is V naught. Okay.
Yes, sir.
And B's velocity is 0. Okay.
Yeah.
So they are different to begin with, no? And now
Oh,
this is at natural length at this moment. Okay. Now as the spring compresses, what is happening? The spring is pushing A back like this, no? So A is decelerating.
Okay.
And B is accelerating. Okay. So from this point onwards, you can
okay,
see that VB starts to increase and VA starts to decrease as the spring is compressed. Okay.
Yes.
So what will happen is that as VA continues to decrease and VB continues to increase, at some stage VB will become greater than VA. So at that stage, the spring will stop compressing. It will now start
Yes.
relaxing back.
So simply A is just pushing the B block.
Through the spring, yeah. But then B is pushing back A through the spring. No? So A is
Yeah.
decelerating, B is accelerating.
We consider different
Okay.
particles in the system.
Yes, yes. Okay. So K by M. So K is this much. M is 2 kg. Okay. Into X square. Sorry, K is this into 10 raised power 2, not 10 raised power minus 2. And X square is 0.5 into 10 raised power minus 2 whole square. So this should be equal to V naught square, which was 2 square. Okay. So this equation will become VA square plus VB square is equal to 4 minus, now this term will be 25 by 2 into 0.25, right? Into 10 raised power minus 2. So this is 0.25 whole square. So 0.0625 divided by 2. Okay. Something like this. Okay. Okay. So now we have this combination of equations to solve. This one. So we can substitute VB as 2 minus VA. Okay. And make a quadratic equation out of this. So 2 VA square minus 4 VA plus 4 is equal to, so we'll get this kind of quadratic relation. So from this we can find the value of VA, and then VB will become 2 minus VA. So we can find that out. Okay. So this is the general process. Okay.
Sir,
Yes.
the work done, spring work, like work done by the spring wouldn't it be half minus half kx?
Yeah, but we are not considering work done by the spring, no, but what we are considering is that the mechanical energy of the system, which is the sum of kinetic energies of the blocks A plus B
Yes, sir.
plus the potential energy of the spring, this is remaining conserved.
Oh, okay.
No? So we
Yes.
are taking the spring as part of our system. So the spring force is an internal conservative force. No? So we will not consider, okay, so for that system, what is happening? The work done by any external force is zero. The work done by any non-conservative force is zero because there's only one force, which is the internal conservative force. There's no external or non-conservative force, right?
Yes, sir. Understood.
So instead of using work done by the spring, we are using the concept of potential energy of the spring and therefore conservation of mechanical energy of the system. Okay, so this is an equation which will actually give us, you know, something very close to, you'll see that the two solutions that we'll have is that one solution is V is almost zero. Okay. And another
Sir, आप
solution
like it's a weird one, like थोड़ा zero के approach में ही आ रहा है.
and the other is that V is almost equal to the initial value, which is 2 meters per second. Okay. So, I mean, 0.5 centimeter is such a small compression, that the spring has almost come back to natural length. That's why this is happening. Okay. So basically this is happening because X equal to 0.5 centimeter is almost equivalent to X becoming zero again. So the spring is back to relaxed state, to natural length. So when the spring is back to natural length, at that point of time, what will happen is that VA will be zero this time and VB will have become the initial speed V naught or 2 meters per second. Okay. But we'll do a bit more with this question. We'll also find out what is the maximum compression the spring undergoes. And through that, you will see why this 0.5 is a very small amount, because compared to the maximum compression, you'll see that 0.5 centimeters is very less. So actually it's almost equivalent to X equal to 0. Okay, so we'll do a third part of this question now. We want to find the maximum compression experienced by the spring. And also what are the values of VA and VB at this instant when X is equal to the maximum value. Yes, Jitesh, that's correct. V naught into the square root of that term. Okay.
Yes, sir.
So you can find it out numerically. Now, when you're finding it out numerically, don't forget to take the proper unit of K. That is in Newton per meter, not instead of Newtons per centimeter.
Yes, sir. Okay.
So for the other people, everybody else here, the hint is that when the spring reaches a maximum compression, okay, that means at that moment, what should be the relative velocity of A and B? So if you visualize initially when the spring is compressing, the relative velocity is such that A is approaching B. Now, if you're sitting at A, it look like if you're sitting at B, it will look like A is coming towards you because VA is greater than VB. Whereas later when the spring starts relaxing, the relative velocity is such that A is separating from B. If you're sitting on B, it will look like A is now going back again because VA is less than VB. So at the moment when the spring has maximum compression, what should be the relative velocity? Okay. Just think about that. Yes, Jitesh. Okay, verify the answer. Just think about that carefully. That at the moment when the spring comes closest, I mean A comes closest to B, so the spring has maximum compression. What can we say about the relative velocity? Yeah, so let's understand this thing about the relative velocity. So the correct answer to what I'd asked is that at the moment when the spring has maximum compression, the relative velocity should be 0. Okay, because when you look just before this has come in contact with the spring, okay, so at this point of time, this is at rest, this is moving with V0, and the spring is at natural length. Now compare this with a little bit of time later. So because they have come in contact, B is moved. Okay. So at this point of time, this is moving at VA, this is moving at VB. The spring is compressed. So it is applying. So this is having an acceleration in this direction. This block. So experiencing force Kx in this direction. Is experiencing force Kx in this direction. So right now, let's say that VA is greater than VB. So A is approaching B. Okay. So what is happening to the spring? X is increasing. The compression of the spring is increasing. Okay. But remember, at the same time, VA is in deceleration mode and VB is in acceleration mode. So eventually what's going to happen is that B's velocity would become greater than A's velocity. Okay. So now B is separating from A. So at this point of time, what is happening? The compression of the spring X is now decreasing. So the state of the spring is always compressed in both these diagrams. Okay. But the difference is that here the compression is increasing when VA is greater than VB. Whereas now by the time VB becomes greater than VA, the compression starts decreasing. So in between these two, there will be a precise instant when VA is equal to VB. That is when the compression will be maximum. So at the moment when the two blocks are having common velocity or relative velocity is 0, that is when the compression is having its maximum value. This is a very important point. Okay, so X is maximum, that is A is closest to B. At an instant when their relative velocity becomes 0. So in other words, in ground frame, VA is equal to V. So we'll apply this as a special condition for this to happen, that X reaches its maximum. So we'll use this to find out now the maximum compression. So equation 1 was, remember, VA plus VB was equal to V0, okay, from momentum conservation. And equation 2 was VA square plus VB square plus K by mx square was equal to V0 square. Now in these two equations, put this condition. X is equal to the maximum value when VA is equal to VB. So from that you will get the maximum compression. And I think it should be 40 centimeters. So when you substitute everything in SI unit, you will get the answer in meters as 0.4. I'm just putting the values here. K was given to us as 25 newtons per centimeter. Okay. And mass of the blocks was 2 kgs each. And the initial speed was also 2 meters per second. So from this you substitute. So this is not going to be a complicated equation. We won't have to solve any quadratic term or anything like that. Be quite easy to solve x actually. Just the values you have to get correct.
Yes, sir.
Uh,
Okay, so let's check out the solution. So from the first equation, when we substitute VA equal to VE, we'll get V naught by 2 or 1 meter per second. Now substitute this in the second equation.
0.04
So
meter.
0.04, that's 4
Meter.
centimeters. Okay, let's see. 25 into 10 raised power 2, okay, divided by 2 into x square should be 2 square.
0.4 meter.
0.4 you should get. So this will become 2. Okay. So x square is 4 by 25 into 100. So x you will get a square root of this. So that's 2 by 5 into 10. No? So that is 0.4.
Yes.
Sorry. No, wait, that's not 0.4.
10 raised to minus 1.
10 raised power minus 1. Yeah.
So it will be 4
0.0.
centimeter only.
Yes,
So 0.04 meters.
yes,
So x is coming out to be 4 centimeters.
yes.
Okay. So the maximum compression of the spring is 4 centimeters. Okay. That is why for 0.8 we were getting like, 0.5 centimeters which I had taken in that. No? That was 1/8 of this. No? So we are getting like a result which was very close to x becoming 0 again. That is when it comes back to natural length. Okay. So here what we see is that as the spring is compressing from 0 to 4 centimeters, okay, the compression is increasing, and then after 4 centimeters the spring starts relaxing again. So maximum compression of the spring is equal to 4 centimeters. And also, like, from this state of maximum compression of 4 centimeters, when both these blocks have the common speed of V naught by 2, so this has the maximum compression. Now from this state, eventually it goes back to a state where the spring is relaxed again. Okay. X becomes 0. So if you check what happens in that state, you'll see that VA becomes 0 and VB becomes 2 meters per second. So also check that eventually when the spring loses contact with A again, okay, because its compression has come back to 0. So when that happens, VA plus VB is V naught, okay, and VA square plus VB square is equal to V naught square. So when you solve this system of equations, you will get the result because X is equal to 0. So when you solve this, you will get the condition that V is becoming 0 and VB is becoming V naught. So eventually that is what is happening. Once the spring comes back to natural length condition, this is going to pick up that speed and this is going to come to rest. E is going to come to rest and B will start moving with the original speed of A. So actually this is very much like a what we call an elastic collision scenario, but it's like that collision is happening in slow motion because the spring is involved. So later when we see direct collisions between objects with no spring in between, something similar might be happening, but it's happening in much more fast forward. Like this, there is no gradual change from initial to final state while the spring is compressing and then coming back to natural length. All that happens in an instant while the two objects are in contact. Okay, so this is this part of the application of these concepts.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, Vedant, in that case, there might be some difference, okay, because then the spring would be going from a state of extension to natural length to compression. So that would make a difference to, but the concepts used will be the same, Vedant. The two equations that we'll use, conservation of mechanical energy and conservation of linear momentum, those two equations will remain the same. Just the way we apply them, because then initially the spring might have some x. No?
Okay.
If, okay, so that's the only difference. Okay, now, yeah, so this is about applications of motion of center of mass and momentum and conservation of linear momentum, etc. Okay, now we come to another part of this chapter where we are now coming back to continuous mass distributions. Like you would remember in the beginning, we had discussed about the two types of system of particles, continuous mass distributions and discrete particle systems. So
Yes.
now for some time, we will concentrate on continuous mass distributions and how to find the position of center of mass. Okay. Continuous mass distributions and center of mass by application of definite integration. Okay, so finding the position of the center of mass by application of definite integration. Okay. So let's say this is some typical continuous distribution of mass. Okay, and we are comparing this with a discrete particle system where we have number of particles. Yes, okay. So with respect to some coordinate frame now, we want to find the center of mass of this continuous system. Okay, using the same kind of logic that we had used for finding the center of mass of a discrete particle system. Now, similarly here, so what we have done in this case is that for each of the particles, we had the individual position vectors.
Sir.
And then to find the position of the center of mass, we use this weighted mean formula, that is summation mass into position divided by summation of mass. So here what we'll do is, instead of that, because we don't have individual particles, so from the whole continuous mass distribution, we will take a differential particle of mass dm. So dm becomes a differential mass element. Okay, so we can call it a differential particle, but a very small mass dm. And suppose that one's position vector is r. Then the position of the center of mass should be such that it is the same summation thing, but in the summation, mi is replaced with dm. So mi into ri becomes position into dm, and the summation is replaced with integration. And similarly, in the denominator, we have total mass. So m is the total mass. We can also treat m as the integration of dm. So integrated sum of all the masses. So basically, when we convert a discrete particle system into a continuous system, so when we are doing this conversion, what we are doing is this is converted to dm, and therefore this is converted to an integration. Differential mass means very small mass. Just like delta M means some change in mass, like that dm means a very small change in mass, so it's a very, very small mass dm. So if the total mass is capital M, dm is a very, very small fraction of that mass, like such a small fraction that its value is tending to 0. dm is delta M, where delta is tending to 0. So this is the general formula that we use now. Now we'll also see a certain classification of continuous
Can you wait
mass
first?
systems. Okay.
Silent.
Okay, done.
So just a
Yes.
second. Silent.
Okay. So next what we do is to understand how to actually carry out this integration. Okay. We develop certain classification methods so that we can do the integration with respect to dm more easily. Okay. So continuous systems continuous mass distributions, that is, are now sub-categorized into 3 different types. So one is what we call the linear distribution of mass. In this, the mass is distributed over a length. So hence it is called a linear distribution. So example, a thin rod. Okay. Or a thin wire bent into some kind of shape. So the mass is distributed over the length of the wire which has been bent. Okay. Now the second type of classification is a surface distribution. So in surface distribution, the mass of the system is distributed over a certain area of a surface. So for example, we have a thin disk. So the thickness is negligible. Okay, so the mass is distributed over this surface. Or we have, let's say, a thin bowl type of shell. The mass is distributed over the surface. It's distributed over a certain surface area. And finally, the third category, we have volume distribution. So in this, mass is distributed over 3-dimensional volume. So any solid rigid body. Could have a solid cylinder. Or a cube, a cuboid or whatever. So these are all the different types of examples. So we will see that when we are calculating the position of center of mass by using this integration method for any continuous mass distribution. So for each of these, we follow a certain convention. Okay, so for the linear distribution, the convention that we follow is that dm, the mass element or the differential mass element, is written as lambda dl, where dl is a differential length or a very small length, and lambda is mass per unit length. Similarly, when we are talking about a surface distribution, we write dm as sigma into dA, where dA is a differential area, okay, and sigma is mass per unit area. And finally, when you are talking about a volume distribution, we take this. Okay, so dV is a differential or very small volume, and this rho is density, or it is mass per unit volume. So this is how we further break the problem, okay, according to its geometrical classification, whether it is a linear distribution, a surface distribution, or a volume distribution. So accordingly, dm becomes a length element dl, or it becomes a surface element dA, or it becomes a volume element dV. So just make a note of this classification first, then I'll explain with examples. We'll spend quite a bit of time on this. There are some standard examples and derivations which we'll learn, as well as how to generally apply this to any arbitrary question.
So matlab in short, we are just trying to convert the variables in like single form so that we can integrate easily. Right?
Yes, exactly. So that dm is converted into the form of either a differential length dl, or a differential area dA, or a differential volume, which can then be integrated over the entire body. Whether it's a linear body, so it has a length, or it is a surface, so it has a total surface area, or it's a volume, right?
Yes.
Now, what is also very important here, that the techniques of integration that we'll learn, they are going to be applicable for us in future also, in chapters like gravitation, rotational mechanics for calculation of moment of inertia, electrostatics in class 12, and all that. So it's very important that we perfect the techniques of integration and the various different methods and tricks that we will learn here.
That's the topic.
One And
So done.
Okay, people, so this concept is clear. Written this down.
Sir.
Okay, so now let us look at our first example of a linear distribution. We'll one by one look at various different types of distributions and understand examples. Now, some of the examples we'll do will be standard examples, and the final formula we'll develop, you will memorize. Okay, but I will tell you for which ones you have to memorize the formula, whereas which ones are more like just examples of problems. Okay, so this current one we'll do is an example of a thin rod with non-uniform distribution of mass. Had it been uniform distribution, then obviously the midpoint would be the center of mass. So let's look at an example. So we have a thin uniform rod of length L. So the total length of the rod is known to us. It is L. But the mass is not uniformly distributed. Rather, it is given to us that the mass is a function of x, where x is the distance from one end. So here, given that if we take x as the distance of any point within the rod from this end, okay. So given that the linear mass density, which is another way of expressing the quantity, mass per unit length, lambda is given by this kind of a formula. This is given to us in the question. Okay, so it is a function of x, as you can see. So we have to find the position of the center of mass from this. Okay. So from this, you will obviously understand that the center of mass is not going to be at the midpoint because mass is not evenly distributed. But can you estimate whether it should be to the right of the midpoint or to the left?
Right, sir.
How
No,
come?
no, wait. Left, yeah. It's inverse.
No, think again.
Just a second.
Sir, it would be to the right.
Right only, yes, because
हाँ,
Right,
कहाँ
because
पे
as
density ज़्यादा है? It is
the
the
density
density is
will
increasing as you're going towards the right, no?
yes,
Yes,
So the
sir.
center of mass should be the mass is distributed more towards the right than towards the left, no? The center of mass will shift to the right of the midpoint. Okay.
yes,
So
sir.
that's clear. Okay. Now, what kind of distribution it is? It's a linear distribution over a length. Okay. And lambda is given to us as a function of x. So how we will
Yes.
find the center of mass of the system? We will imagine that we have sliced this rod into tiny particles, and each particle is basically a differential length dx. Okay. And then we'll use the integration. We can make use of This expression that is given to us. Yeah, dm will be lambda into dx, no? So we are slicing, let's say, a thin section over here. So very small thickness dx. So this will now act like a differential particle. It will act like a dm. But how much its mass will be? It will be lambda into dx. So lambda is lambda naught 1 plus x by L into dx. So you can see these particles are getting heavier as you go towards the right hand side. Okay. So now we can see that x coordinate of the center of mass has the formula integration x dm divided by total mass. But of course,
Yes,
total
yes.
mass is integration of dm. Okay. So the numerator, this integration x dm will become integration of x into lambda dx, which is further x into lambda naught 1 plus x by L dx, but integrated from x equal to 0 to x equal to L. So we'll find out how much this is. And for the denominator, also we have to do the integration of dm. So the denominator total m is also an unknown quantity. Okay. So m will separately be integration of dm, that is integration of lambda dx, that is integration of lambda naught 1 plus x by L, again integrated for the same limits. So for the second integral, we are just adding up the masses of all the particles to find the total mass in the denominator. For the first integral, we are basically calculating the numerator, which is like the weighted mean of the particles. It is integration x dm. I mean, the ratio of the two will become the weighted mean, which is the x coordinate of the center of mass. So just complete these two integrals first, then we'll discuss the final answer.
Yes, sir, done.
Just a second, sir.
Yeah, so what is the answer of the first integration you got?
That is
Is
5 into 10 raised to 4. That's it.
This will be like this now, x square by L.
5 L square by 6 lambda naught.
L square
Ah,
3
correct,
pi
correct.
3 lambda plus 2 upon 6.
Okay. So I'll just do the calculation parametrically and give you the value in centimeters in a bit of time by substitution. Okay. So when you do this integration, you can see it will be lambda naught into x square by 2 plus x cube by 3L, right?
Yes.
And on this, we are putting the limit 0 to L. So we will get lambda naught, okay, L square by into 5 by 6, correct?
Yes.
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 Sir.
Yeah, yeah, ठीक है. And denominator में
Yes.
we'll get this integration, lambda naught comes outside and 1 plus x by L from 0 to L. So the indefinite integration first becomes x plus x square by 2L. And on putting the limits, this will come lambda naught L square into 3 by 2. Is that correct?
Yes. Yes.
So you can see that that is a total mass actually, because we need that also for the second part. Just a second. This should be L, not L square. Yeah. Okay. That's this. So total mass will, for example, become 10 grams into 100 centimeters into 3 by 2.
Yes. So this
So 1500 grams is the total mass. That is how the answer of the second part. The first part's answer. So it is this integration divided by the total mass. So it is lambda naught L square 5 by 6 divided by 3 by 2 lambda naught L. So how much that is coming to now?
So I got 5 by 3 into 10. Total pura answer.
No, so in parametrically, lambda naught L will cancel off and 5 by 6 divided by 3 by 2. So how much that will give us? 5 by 9, isn't it?
Yes. Sir. Yes.
Yes.
5 by
yes.
9 L. Okay. So yeah, so numerically that is 5 by 9 into 100 centimeters. So x coordinate of the center of mass is 500 by 9. So that is
55 points.
okay. So you can see that it is pretty close to the center, 50 centimeters, but still it is somewhat to the right of the center of mass,
Yes.
of the geometrical center. It's not at the midpoint. Okay.
Yes, sir.
So this is like one simple example of the standard method. We are doing that integration. I mean, we are doing a one-dimensional integral here. So this formula has actually come from this formula that RCM is integration of RDM divided by total mass. And further, this will become like, if it's a three-dimensional situation.
So I just took in the coordinate axis.
Okay, so here y and z were not required because they are 0, because it's a linear distribution on the x-axis. Okay. So we are making use of this. Okay, so we'll conclude with that in today's session. Okay, I think we have a couple of more sessions this week. So we will
Yes, sir.
continue further with center
We
mass.
have one tomorrow as well.
2 more.
And then we have one also on Saturday, right? So what
Yes,
we'll do is Saturday's lecture, we will keep aside some time for discussion of any doubts, last moment doubts in circular motion, because you have a test on Sunday, right?
Yes.
Sir, I have one.
Yeah. So please keep the doubts collected. Okay. Of course, there are doubt sessions that are happening in each of the centers also, like, so if
yes,
you are
sir.
coming to the centers, try to clear your doubts physically, because that is the best option. But if you're not able to clear the doubts in the center, not enough time or whatever, then I will keep aside some time on Saturday's lectures, the second half. Please remind me during that lecture also that time that if you have any circular motion doubts before your test, you can clear that, perform well in the test. Okay, so that's it for today's session, people. All the best. Have a nice day.
Thank you, sir. Bye, sir.
It's a
Thank you.